Okay, well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Facebook folks. Glad to have you with us. Welcome. We are going to look at Job 38 and God's first speech. So before that, let's just take a moment to pray. God in heaven, thanks for the day. Thank you for the warmth and the sunshine and how that makes us feel. And God, we're grateful that you take care of us that way. God, thank you for these words that we're going to read. Thank you for causing them to be penned and kept and useful for correcting, instructing, teaching, and training in your word. So, God, do use these words that are yours to teach, correct, rebuke, and train us in righteousness so that we might be thoroughly equipped for every good work. And we ask this in your name, Jesus. Amen. Okay. So, 38 through 42 really uh, are the God speeches. Well, end of 41. And so we're going to take a look at the first speech. There's two speeches from God, two answers from Job, or one non answer and one answer. So we're going to have a look at least the first one today. And then we're almost done. I would say we have two classes left, maybe one, depending on how far we get today, because we just have God's second speech, which will look a lot like his first speech. So, we've kind of covered it. And then we have the epilogue, which won't take us a great amount of time, I don't think. So, and then we have the test. Yeah, so we're getting the certificates already. You'll have earned your bachelor's in Job, your bachelor's in how to suffer righteously, and yeah, yeah, what not to say before God or something. I don't know. Anyway, let me make a number of observations before we get into the words that God speaks. Just a few observations about Elihu. Remember, Elihu introduced the idea that perhaps suffering has a different purpose. Perhaps suffering is useful for correction and discipline. And that was a bit of a new shift in the dialogue. And I don't know that Elihu purposely introduced that, but secondarily he came to that thought anyway. That maybe it's not just all about the suffering, but maybe there's a purpose in suffering. So he wasn't able to answer that or, give us the definitive answer, but he brought it up at least because we were all thinking that. That's one of the wonderful things about the book of Job is it's like the author knows us, you know. So he brings those things up. Elihu's lesson really was do not assume to speak for God. Do not think that we know God as well as we do. We discover, and as Elihu alludes to, Job is too arrogant, and his friends for that matter too. I mean, they assumed they spoke for God, and they assumed that they knew God as well as anybody would know God, and they have him the corner in the market, so they knew. And Elihu comes along and just kind of says, does anybody really know God that well? Maybe we can't speak for God uh, or assume that everything we say is speaking for God. And, I think there's a lesson, New Testament, for us, right? There's a lot of times we assume to speak for God, or at least we pretend to speak for God. Well, God told me. Oh, did he? Okay, well, until he tells me what he told you, no, right? God told me that we're not supposed to have we're not supposed to have the service today. God told me Dan's going to sing 5 of these songs, and I have them written down, so here you go. Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad that God told you that, but he forgot to tell me, and he forgot to tell Dan, and so until he does that, sorry, you don't get to speak for God, right? I think we use that far too much. Well, God told me. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. You know, maybe I told God and I somehow heard God say it to me in my voice. Huh, how about that? There are times we can certainly say, "Thus saith the Lord," right? God does speak, and we can know God, but we shouldn't assume that every idea that's ours comes from God. So, which the three friends thought, and I think Job at first at least thought that as well. And then Elihu signifies the coming of God. So we're set up for God's voice. I wanted to just make a few observations about Job as well. Um, Job has been thus far demanding and seeking an audience with God. He's been demanding to meet God. God, I want an audience with you. I want to go to court with you. He wants to plead his case. He wants to show God that he knows he's innocent. Go back to chapter 9. And chapter 9, this is where Job is really saying all throughout this chapter, if only I could go before God. If I could get before God, I could prove my innocence. If I could have an audience with him, if we could get to court, I would show him, sort of thing. But verse 4, his wisdom is profound, his power is vast. Who can resist him and come out unscathed? And he goes on and he says, look, I would like to go before God, but God's too powerful to confront. I just, if I go before God, I can't, because verse 11, he passes me. I can't see him where he goes by. I cannot perceive him. He's just too powerful for me, so I can't go before God. Then in verses 15 through 16, he says, well, God is too transcendent to care. God's way out there. God doesn't even care about me. First, if I could even get in the same room with God, it wouldn't make a difference, because he's just too powerful and he wouldn't listen to me anyway. And then he doesn't really care about me. He's too transcendent for that. Verse 15 of chapter 9, though I were innocent, I could not answer him. I could only plead with my judge for mercy. Even if I summoned him and he responded, I do not believe he would give me a hearing. And an interesting verse is verse 17. He would crush me with a storm and multiply my wounds with no reason. He would not let me regain my breath. He would overwhelm me with misery. Well, of course, in chapter 38 that we're going to look at, God shows up in the storm. Right? So, and interestingly enough, God doesn't crush him in the storm. God speaks to him in a storm, but he doesn't crush him in a storm. So he says, God's just too powerful. He wouldn't listen to me. He's too transcendent to care. Even if I were innocent, he wouldn't care about it, because who can dispute with him? He doesn't care about me. In verses 32 through 35, he looks for a mediator, right? He's not a man like me that I might answer him, that we might confront each other in court. If only there were someone who would arbitrate between us, to lay his hand upon us both, someone to remove God's rod from me, so that this terror would frighten me no more. He's looking for a mediator. And then, so that's chapter 9, and he's saying, I would love to come before God because I'm innocent. I would prove that, but it's never going to happen, and God doesn't care about me anyway, and God, he would just overpower me and crush me in a storm, and there's no point to it. So I wish I could, but I can't. Then we get into chapter 31, and by chapter 31, after all the arguments are done, in verses 35 through 37, Job says he's confident. He says, I'm gonna go before God, and I'm going to win in court. He says, oh, that I had someone to hear me. I sign now my defense. Let the Almighty answer me. Let my accuser put his indictment in writing. Surely I'd wear it on my shoulder. I'd put it on like a crown. I would give it to him. I would give him an account of my every step. Like a prince, I would approach him. So he's pretty confident at this stage. Like, I would go before God, and I would show him, and he would see that I'm innocent. And I'm not afraid to go before God anymore, because he's doing me wrong, and I can prove it. Okay? So all of Job's words are leading up to God speaking. All of Elihu's words are leading up to speaking, to God speaking. And of course, God speaks out of the storm. Verse 1 of 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of the storm. He answered him out of the storm. Um, so God does answer Job, but not the way Job envisioned it happening. There's no courtroom. There's no pride for Job. There's no wearing a crown. There's no, I'm going to approach him like a prince. There's no, hey, I'm going to show him my innocence. You'll see. I'll make the T-shirt and said, "Been there, done that." Not quite. He thinks he's going to plead his case and be proven innocent, but it's God who speaks. Job doesn't get to speak. I mean, he has a few feeble answers, but all of Job's arguments are gone. All of Job's all of his self-confidence is gone. All of his well thought out speeches are done. They don't come to mind. They don't come to the tongue. They're just not there. He remains silent, and he's just overwhelmed by God. The storm is interesting. It's interesting that the author would use God speaking out of the storm. And I love that he kind of foreshadowed it back in chapter 9, that where Job believes God would just show up in a storm and crush him. Because the storm is often, almost always used not only to show the power of God, but to indicate the displeasure and judgment of God. So generally when God shows up in a storm in the Old Testament, he's showing up to show his power, and often with it his displeasure and his judgment. Not always, but almost always. It's always showing his power, at least. Even with Moses and the Israelites, Moses goes up to Sinai, and God shows up in a storm, right? The thunder, the lightning, the earthquake, all of that kind of thing. Elijah goes up Sinai, and it is a sign of God's displeasure. Right? There's the thunder, the lightning, the earthquake, the fire, all of that kind of thing. And what are you doing up here, Elijah? I deserve to be up here. I'm angry. Okay. I'm going to show up too then. So now what are you doing up here? I don't really know. Sorry. I'm going back down. That kind of thing. But turn to Psalm 83:15. We'll just look up a few of these. So Psalm 83:15, Isaiah 29:6. So if someone wants to take Isaiah 29:6. And okay, thank you, Jokes. Isaiah 40:24. Anybody want to grab Isaiah 40, verse 24? Okay, thank you, Lisa. I take back my comments. Jeremiah 23:19. Okay, Wayne, thank you. So Psalm 83. Is anybody at Psalm 83:15? You want to read that, Mary? Okay, so the psalmist is showing the picture of God pursuing the wicked in the tempest and terrifying them with the storm. God is showing God's power and his displeasure and even his judgment. Isaiah 29:6. Aha. Yeah, that's pretty clear. That's power and judgment and displeasure. Flames of a devouring fire. So we got the windstorm, tempest, thunder, earthquake. The Lord Almighty's, when he shows up, you'll know he shows up, right? Isaiah 40:24. Lisa. Okay. So there again is the picture of God showing up in his power and sweeps away creation by his breath of the wind of his breath kind of thing. He blows on them and they wither. And then we have Jeremiah 23:19. Okay, so again, another picture of the whirlwind of God, the wrath of God is coming. He comes in a storm. He shows up. I don't know if you've seen some of those paintings, of God coming in the storm. Those are wonderful paintings, aren't they? Like, I think there's a few about Elijah, and he's up on the mountain, and there's God in the storm, right? And there's fire, and there's rocks falling, and you can see the trees bending over, and the Elijah's cloak being, sideways kind of thing. Those are great. I like those pictures. They're just, that's the power and the awe of God kind of thing. So that's the picture of the storm and the whirlwind. So God is answering Job out of this storm. And God's opening words indicate his at least irritation towards Job. Look at what he says in verse 2. Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Brace yourself like a man. I will question you and you shall answer me. Right? Because Job's saying, God, you're going to answer me. I expect answers here, God. And God says, who is this that darkens my counsel? Who is this that speaks for me or claims to speak, but his wisdom is dark? You're not shedding light on anything. You're darkening my counsel, if anything, Job. You're not shedding light on the situation. So brace yourself like a man. That is that is just great. How many times did you hear your dad say that to you? Brace yourself like a man, Chris. Too many. I know it. I know it. Yeah, right? Yeah. I would tell you, but this is being recorded. My parents might be listening. So, I always have to be cognizant that we're live. And someone might, like my parents, listen. Actually, I think they do. No offense. Anyway, so he says, and he uses words without knowledge. Job claims to have wisdom, but God is going to show him, and he begins to show him who the Creator is, where knowledge comes from, and what it really is. And so he says, now you shall answer me. I have a bunch of questions for you, Job. Are you ready? Brace yourself. Take it like a man, because it's coming. It's going to right on your chin, dude. So here we go. Um, so the God speeches, before I read all that, I know we'll get there. Before we read all that, the God speeches are interesting the way they're arranged. This is just a little bit more background or observation for you. There's two speeches, one in 38 through chapter 40, verse 2. Job answers briefly for a couple of verses, and then God's second speech begins in chapter 40, verse 6, and ends at the end of chapter 41, which is for verse 34. And in both of these speeches, he starts out with the same question. 38:3, brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Take a look at 40, verse 6. Or verse 7, I guess it is. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm, brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. So a clear demarcation of God's second speech, and he begins the same way. Okay? So there's the question's the same. Both speeches talk about creation. The first speech talks about the skies and the animals. It talks about the beginning of creation, the heavens, the animals. The second speech talks about Behemoth and Leviathan, or Behemoth, I guess, if you want to be Americanized. Um, Behemoth in Hebrew, but Behemoth and Leviathan. So they are we'll talk about that in a second. They are both real creatures, names for real creatures, and also mythological creatures representing creation and destruction. Question.
So, the storm,
Hmm.
this is what's going on in Job's heart, in his mind. All of the swirling
Mm.
confusion
Hmm. Hmm.
that he feels in the midst of the pain he's feeling
Yeah.
and the search for answers, just that internal struggle. And out of
Yeah.
the midst of that, God is speaking to him, the storm.
Yeah, I think both things are going on. I mean, I like the way you described Job's internal chaos as a storm. Um, but God's not entering into Job's storm. God is bringing His own storm. This is God showing up in a God storm, not just showing up because Job has his own storm going on. Is that is that what
Well,
you were
I'm,
getting at?
I'm looking for a mental image
Hmm.
of this storm entering that circumstance. And
Well, I think the author wants us to believe that it is a real storm with darkened clouds and wind picking up and thunder and lightning, and out of that the voice of God thunders. And so Job is seeing this and experiencing this and feeling this, just like Moses did, just like Elijah did, just like the Israelites would have seen and heard and felt the wind of those storms and heard the rumbles and whatnot. God is actually showing up in a physical sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good question. So both God's speeches begin with the same question. Both God's speeches relate to creation. Um, and both God's speeches have a response from Job. The first response is Job 40, verse 3 through 5. And then the second response we find in Job 42, 1 through 6. So he has a few more, a bit more to say after the second speech. So that's the way they're put together, which is again just great literature, uh, because I, they just reflect each other. It's wonderful poetry. I won't go there, but I just can't say enough about that. It's wonderful. So we're going to commission Carl to write some poetry about the storm. Oh, okay. All right. I wasn't going to make it that tough for you, but you're a man who likes a challenge, so I like it. I like it. All right. I'm waiting. Next week we'll hear Carl's haiku. Maybe okay. All right. Well, we'll give you a little bit more time for that then. You can collaborate if you need to. Uh, at any rate, um, one of my one of the assignments that we had in our class, the Job class that I took, was um, to either this God's God's storm um, response or uh, Job's wisdom response. We were to do something creative with it. So Job 28, that high point of poetry. What is wisdom? Whatnot. Some people did that, wrote our own poems. I actually wrote a song, but I have no idea where it is or even what it sounded like anymore because I don't have those notes anymore. I was going to sing it to you because I put it to guitar and I sang it, and I think that's what I got a good mark for because I was brave enough to sing a song whenever, Anyway, but there's some wonderful, wonderful poetry about the storm image, and it was just great. So that's a challenge. I mean, it's just when you can when you can put it in your own words and you can be creative with it, you're beginning to understand it, right? And so that's why when I read John Piper's poetry last, I mean, it just brought everything to life because he really understood it and he encapsulated it in fewer words. And I think Jerry said every line was, meant something. So, and it's yours forever if you can do that. So, So there you go. We can have one Sunday where everybody recites their poems, and we'll. I got to try and remember what my song was. Yeah, yeah. I looked through all my notes. It might be in one other spot. I'll see if I can find it because that was kind of fun to do. But anyway, I don't think it'd be a song that the worship team would sing though. Just doesn't seem to me it was that good. Let's look at God's speech, his first speech. So, verse 4, and he begins with uh, asking Job, tell me if you understand the origins of creation. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundations? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched the measuring line across it? Or what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone? I guess 7 goes with that. While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. So, Job, where were you? Job, answer me. What do you understand about the origins of creation, Job? Where were you? Uh, hmm. Then he goes into uh, Job, tell me if you understand. What's your understanding about the control of creation? Verses 8 through 11. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness? When I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place? When I said, this far you may come and no farther, here is where your proud waves halt. Like, Job, where were you? What's your understanding, Job, about the control of creation? What do you know about telling the ocean it can't cross this sand? What do you know about fixing the foundations of the world? What do you know about limiting the sea? Mm. Yeah, yeah. I think at the very least he's irritated. But yeah, and that's the whole point of God answering out of the storm. Is okay, Job. You've gone too far. I've heard enough. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to show up in a way that you're going to understand it's me, and you're going to understand that you took a step or two too far, and I want you to understand who I am and understand who you are. Job, you're not a man like me. You're right. We can't meet in court. But Job, you seem to have forgotten that you're not a man, or forgotten that I'm not a man like you. I'm God, and who are you? Right? That's what he's saying. So he's asked 2 questions. He asked the next question in 12 through 15. Job, tell me of your understanding about wickedness. Job, what do you really know about wickedness? Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place, that it might take the earth by the edges and shake the wicked out of it? The earth takes shape like clay under a seal. Its features stand out like those of a garment. The wicked are denied their light, and their upraised arm is broken. So, Job, what do you really know about wickedness? What do you know about controlling wickedness? What do you know about punishing wickedness? What do you know about the origins of wickedness, Job? Then he asks him, what do you understand about the depths of creation? In verses 16 through 21. Have you journeyed to the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have you been to what's that deepest trench in the Marianas Trench? Yeah. Have you been there, Job? Have the gates of death been shown to you? Have you seen the gates of the shadow of death? Have you comprehended the vast expanses of the earth? Tell me if you know all this. What is the way to the abode of light? And where does darkness reside? Can you take them to their places? Do you know the paths to their dwellings? Surely you know, for you are already born. You've lived so many years. Like, Job, you're just, I mean, you've already said how wise you are and, how vast your learning is. So, Job, help me out. Enlighten me, Job, about your understanding on the depths of creation. Like, I want to go to the gates of death. Where are they? Take me there. Oh, you don't know the way. Oh, take me to the gates of light. Oh, oh, you don't have the map for that either. Oh, okay, Job, tell me, oof, this is wonderful stuff. Verses 31 through 38. Oh, no, sorry, 22 through 30. He asks Job, tell me what you understand about the forces of creation. Can you take did I already say that one? Oh, 21. Wait, 22. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow or seen the storehouses of the hail, which I reserve for times of trouble, for days of war and battle? What is the way to the place where the lightning is dispersed, or the place where the east winds are scattered over the earth? Who cuts a channel for the torrents of rain and a path for the thunderstorm, to water a land where no man lives, a desert with no one in it, to satisfy a desolate wasteland and make it sprout with grass? Does the rain have a father? Whose father, who fathers the drops of dew? From whose womb comes the ice? Who gives birth to the frost from the heavens? When the waters become hard as stone, when the surface of the deep is frozen. So, Job, what's your understanding about the forces of creation? Tell me, Job, explain to me, help me understand where the frost comes from, and the hail comes from, and the ice comes from. Job, help me understand how the path of the rain goes. Job, is that something you kind of chart out and the rain does what you want it to do? I don't think so, Job. And then he says in verses 31 through 38, Job, tell me about your understanding of the organization of the heavens. In verse 31, can you bind the beautiful Pleiades? Can you loose the cords of Orion? So he's talking about constellations. Can you bring forth the constellations in their seasons, or lead out the bear with its cubs? Do you know the laws of the heavens? Can you set up God's dominion over earth? Can you raise your voice to the clouds and cover yourself with a flood of water? Do you send the lightning bolts on their way? Do they report to you? Here we are. Who endowed the heart with wisdom, or gave understanding to the mind? Who is the who has the wisdom to count the clouds? Who can tip over the water jars of the heavens when the dust becomes hard and the clods of earth stick together? What a great phrase, huh? Tip over the jars of heaven, or the water jars of heaven. I like that. There would be another great painting, wouldn't it? Tipping over the water jars of heaven. So you have underneath the earth is just dry and caked and whatnot, and cracked because it's been under the brassy sky, and then you have the clouds above, and then you have this jar slowly tipping over, and the first few pieces, drops of water coming down, and where it hits, you have this first little hint of green. Wouldn't that be sweet? That'd be a great picture. I need to learn how to paint. Maybe I just got to start, right? Just let it out. Okay, I'm going to start singing that song. Let it out, let it out. Well, I know it's a different song, but yeah, okay. Okay, there you go. Well, it might not happen, but if you paint, go ahead and paint that. Maybe I'll have to talk to Joey about that, and she can paint that. So there again, God is just saying, help me understand these things, Job. You have a whole lot to tell me, Job. You've been saying this whole time that you want to come before me, and you've got all your speeches ready, and you've got all your wisdom you want to regale me with. So, Job, I'm ready. Let me have it. Tell me about these things, Job. Let's talk. And then he asks him, Job, what's your understanding about the provision of creation? In verses, wait a second. Yeah, verses 39 through 41. He says, do they hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger of the lions? When they crouch, or do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy the hunger of the lions when they crouch in their dens or lie in wait in a thicket? Who provides food for the raven when its young cry out to God and wander about for lack of food? Job, do you provide for creation? Do you do any of that, Job? I mean, God's not asking him if he puts milk out for the stray cat, right? He's saying, Job, How do all these animals live? Who helps them hunt? Who gives them food? Who set this whole design and order up in creation? Do you know, Job? Do you have any insights for me? Do you understand it? Hmm. And then in chapter 39, the whole chapter 39 is Job, do you understand the creatures of creation? Do you even understand the creatures of creation? Job, you don't understand the origin. You don't understand the control of it. You don't understand the depths of it, the forces of it, the organization of it, the provision of it. Tell me what you understand about creation itself. And he begins with the mountain goats. And he says, okay, Job, do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you watch when the doe bears her fawn? Do you count the months till they bear? Do you know the time they give birth? They crouch down and bring forth their young. Their labor pains are ended. Their young thrive and grow strong in the wilds. They leave and do not return. Um, Job, what do you know about that? Are you are you the doctor for the mountain goats? Are you their labor and delivery doctor? Are you there when that happens? Do you understand all that? And he says, "Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about the wild donkey. Who let the wild donkey go free? Who untied its ropes? I mean, how did he become wild? I gave him the wasteland as his home and salt flats as his habitat. He laughs at the commotion in town. He does not hear a driver's shout. He ranges the hills for his pasture and searches for any green thing." So, Job, what about that? What about the wild donkey? What's your understanding about the wild donkey? Job, how did he come about? Where does he range? How does he eat? Then he says, okay, well, let's move on to the wild ox. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? Will he stay by your manger at night? Can you hold him to the furrow with a harness? Will he till the valleys behind you? Will you rely on him for his great strength? Will you leave your heavy work to him? Can you trust him to bring in your grain and gather it to your threshing floor? I mean, all of these are rhetorical questions, right? No, can't do it. And then he says, well, let's talk about the ostrich. Verse 13. The wings of the ostrich flap joyfully, but they cannot compare with the pinions and feathers of the stork. She lays her eggs on the ground and lets them warm in the sand, unmindful that a foot may crush them, that some wild animal may trample them. She treats her young harshly as if they were not hers. She cares not that her labor was in vain, for God did not endow her with wisdom or give her a share of good sense. Yet when she spreads her feathers to run, she laughs at horse and rider. Right, Job, make some sense of the ostrich, Job. Right? That's why we have the ostrich as the head in the sand, right? The ostrich has no sense, doesn't think things through. I'll just put my head in the sand, it'll all go away. So, Job, tell me about the ostrich. I mean, this ostrich can outrun a horse. When it wants to run, it runs, and you can't catch it. Yet, how in the world does it even survive? Because it just lays its eggs and doesn't care about it. Doesn't make sense, Job. What do you think? Then he talks about the horse. Verse 19. Do you give the horse his strength or clothe his neck with a flowing mane? Did you make him leap like a locust, striking terror with his proud snorting? His paws fiercely rejoicing in his strength, or he paws fiercely rejoicing in his strength and charges into the fray. He laughs at fear, afraid of nothing. He does not shy away from the sword. The quiver rattles against his side, along with the flashing spear and lance. In frenzied excitement, he eats up the ground. He cannot stand still when the trumpet sounds. At the blast of the trumpet, he snorts, aha! He catches the scent of battle from afar, the shout of commanders and the battle cry. So, Job, what do you know about the horse? Like, tell me, understand that. What's going on there, Job? No, no, can't even understand the horse, which you tamed, but you can't really understand that. Okay, how about the birds of prey? How about the hawk? How about the eagle? Verse 26. Does the hawk take flight by your wisdom and spread his wings toward the south? Does the eagle soar at your command and build his nest on high? He dwells on a cliff and stays there at night. A rocky crag is his stronghold. From there he seeks out his food, his eyes detect it from afar, his young ones feast on blood, and where the slain are, there he is, or there is he. So, six different creatures. God says, what do you know about the creatures? Job, what do you know about the origins of creation? What do you know about the control of creation? What do you know about how wickedness entered creation? What do you know about the depths of creation? What do you know about the forces of creation? Job, what do you know about the organization of creation and the provision of creation? And Job, what do you even know about the creatures of creation? Job, tell me your wisdom. And answer me if you want to. Answer me if you can. I want you to note that Job's first speech, God's first speech is in many ways, or some ways at least, a rebuke of Job's speech in chapter 3. Okay, turn back to chapter 3, at the very beginning of this journey. Even before Eliphaz and the friends say anything, Job first speaks. So Job opens his mouth and he cursed the day of his birth. And he goes on, may the day of my birth perish and the night it was said a baby is born, may it turn to darkness and God not care about it and shine no light upon it. And he's really going on and on. Verse 9, may its morning stars become dark. May it wait for daylight in vain and not see the first rays of dawn. For it did not shut the doors on the womb of me and hide trouble from my eyes. So why did I not perish at birth and die as I came from the womb? And he goes on to curse the day of his birth and curse really creation for making him. Why did creation take the time to make me? Why am I even here? Um, why is he even there? I don't know. No, I do know. That's pretty cool. At any rate, so Job's very first speech is to say, I wish I'd never been born. I wish creation would never have made room for me. I wish that I wouldn't even be considered by creation. And yet God, in chapter 39 particular, 38 and 39, upholds creation. And God upholds birth. Do you notice that? He upholds birth. Even the animals whose life is only for a short time and are prey for the carnivorous animals, he upholds their birth. I brought them into being, Job. I know where the goats birth their children. I know how that happens. I know where the eagle brings his prey and feeds his young. I know even uh, the food for the lioness, and I know the food that feeds the birds of prey, because I bring them into being, because they're part of creation. And Job, it all fits together. I did this, Job. Um, Job decries his birth. God upholds his birth. Right? So it's just amazing. I just think that's pretty wonderful. So almost, not almost, but everything that Job thought he knew, God answers him and says, it's not quite like that. Right? Man, my solution, God, would have been I was never born at all. And God says, that's not the solution. To throw creation in chaos is not the solution. To reorder and redesign creation is not the solution. Job, you don't even know how it began. You don't even know how I founded creation. You don't know how I provide for creation. You don't know how I bring creation into being. So, Job, why would you want to think that creation's against you? Job, I'm not against you. There's order and there's design, and God is the one who brings it. And Job is actually wanting the order and design to slip back into chaos so that he doesn't have a life anymore, right? Um, which we kind of all get there, don't we? I mean, if we're in our darkest moments, we kind of get there, and we're human. And I think that's another wonderful thing about the book of Job is he's human, and he has these emotions, and he's bringing them out in poetry, which means you can bring them out in spades. And we, I think, as discerning readers, go, I get that. As self-righteous readers, we go, oh no, that's wrong. You can't do that. But as discerning readers, as honest readers, as understanding our righteousness comes from God, we go, yeah, I get that. Because I have no righteousness on my own. So I've been there saying, God, I wish we could meet in court because I would show you I'm right and you're wrong. I would show you, God, that you're doing me wrong. I would show you, God, that this isn't the way it should be. I would show you how good I am. And God, I'm not saying you're bad, but I'm saying you're not treating me like you should. And we all been there and might again, which is the scary thing, right? There's no, I've got the ticket, so that'll never happen to me again. It will happen to us again because Satan exists, and Satan is constantly trying to bring creation and order and design into chaos. And God is the one saying, nope, it will never descend into chaos where I can't bring it out into order and design for your life again. You will experience that chaos. You will experience that lessening of the design and order and understanding of who God is in creation, but it will never slip into total chaos because God controls it. And that's really what he's telling Job. Job, I know how creation works. I started it. I'm the one who's going to end it. It doesn't end without me. It doesn't start without me. It doesn't do anything without me. Not you, Job. Because Job and his three friends have been saying, yeah, we got it together. We know how this works. God started it, God will end it, but we got it covered in between. No, you don't. No, you don't at all. I like Job's first answer, verses 3 through 5. In chapter 40. The Lord said to Job, will the one who contends with the Almighty correct him? Let him who accuses God answer him. Here's your time, Job. Now you can speak. What do you think? Then Job answered the Lord, I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. Should have done it long before, but I get it now. I spoke once, but I have no answer. Twice, but I will say no more. In other words, God, I've said too much. In speaking what I spoke was too much. And the fact that I kept saying it was far too much. God, I am not righteous. I am unworthy. I can't even stand before you. There he is in this whirlwind and storm in his might, and he's saying, Job, let's talk about what you just said. Let's talk about your desire to drag me down into chaos. Let's talk about your desire to think you control the universe, but you have no idea what it takes to control the universe. Job, you really, by your actions, are trying to drag it down into chaos and confusion and disorder for your pleasure. Job, it's not for that. Job, I keep it in order. I keep the design. It will never get too far in disorder, but I do it for my pleasure, not yours, Job. You're righteous because I let you be righteous, because I give you that righteousness. Your righteousness just because you're right, because I give it to you. You're not righteous because anything you do. So let's not go there, Job. Don't think that you control anything, because you don't. So really, the author is telling us that the universe is a mystery to mankind. The foundations of creation, the control, it's a mystery to mankind, and it still is. Even in our modern day science, The universe is a mystery to mankind. We don't know as much as we think we know. In fact, we can only know what God allows us to know by observation. How do we know gravity exists? Because God allows us to know gravity exists. Not because we're smart and we figured it out. Hey, I think there's something called gravity. How do you know? Well, I just know. No, you know because you've observed something which God has put in place, which is design and order, and it'll happen every single time. We go, I get it. I'm making the connection. That's science, right? It makes the connections. It doesn't start with nothing. It starts with what God has given us. Um, so the universe was, and one thing is interesting to know in these God speeches is we discover, and Job discovers, that we're not the center of the universe. Creation the universe was created not exclusively for mankind. Think about that. It wasn't created exclusively for you and me. We tend to think it is, right? But man is not the center of the universe. Um, God created it for all of his creations. He created this place for the trees, for the lions, for the giraffe, for whatever. Creation it's created for creation. I don't know how to put that any different, but we aren't the only creation. So it's not man-centered. And Job and his three friends want to make creation man-centered. Because I know how God works. I know how it all works. I've got it figured out, so the world spins around the way I see it spinning, including God, because I haven't figured out too. And Job says, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what you really understand. Let's talk about how central you are to creation. Yes, we're created in the image of God, but we are not the center of the universe, which is, opposite to the way we've been taught in school. Humanism. Mankind is the center of everything, the center of all life. We can save the world. We can rescue the whales. We can save the spotted owl. Because we're the center of the universe and it's up to us. Well, yes, we are to be caretakers of the earth, but that comes at it at a whole different angle than environmentalists come at it, right? I mean, we've got to understand that. Mankind's not the center of the universe. Yes. Yes. Exactly. I was getting there, but I like that you got there. No, you don't have to be sorry. I was hoping actually someone would get there. That's why I kept repeating myself. But yes, yes, God is the center of the universe. It's for his glory, not ours. But we tend to think it's for our glory somehow. So we got to save it. And only we can save it without God, right? We can save it by science. No, we can't. So, one of the odd things, I'll get myself in trouble here. One of the odd things is, I read, and this isn't odd, but maybe it is. I read archaeology magazine, and all through the archaeological magazines, it's talking about 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, all this kind of stuff, right? Digging things up and trying to piece together human history and whatnot. And numerous articles all talk about 3,000 years, there was climate change 3,000 years. And because the climate change, we can tell because the hunter-gatherers moved up the mountain because it got too dry down there. And so they moved up and then it changed again. They went down and we see the remains of this. And, so almost, well, many articles talk about climate change without cars, without all the emissions, without factories. They had those wild oxen. Whew. Those emissions on the wild oxen are like 20 times a domesticated cow. So, I mean, so we somehow are now the center of climate change in the earth. I don't think so. Right, right. Who knows? Maybe we will. Right, right, right. Yeah. So I agree that we can't and should not abuse the earth, but I disagree that we're the center of it and we can heal it and we can fix it. Not without God. He's the center. And until we learn as mankind that God's the center, there is not order and design in this creation. Because we're constantly pulling it into chaos. We're constantly pulling it into disorder by us being the center. And only when God is the center does design and order and beauty, only then is it revealed to us and we go, I get it. But our science won't let us do that. Our great humanistic learning won't let us do that because we don't want God. Certainly not at the center. Maybe around the edges, right? I'll use him when I need to call him in for help, but I want him to do what my design of the earth is, my design of my own little space is. I don't want his. Yeah. Retributive theology. Man, you get the star sticker today for saying it. Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. So, um, mankind can't fully know and comprehend the beauty, design, and order of God's creation. We just simply can't. We're starting to learn. We're scratching the surface. If we're honest scientists, we always end up with, but there's more I don't know. But there's more I don't know. I mean, just, yeah, we claim to fully comprehend God, but we can't. And that's what God has shown up in his first speech and said to Job. Talk to me about what you know about creation in this universe. Okay, now tell me what you know, Job. Let me hear your answer. Sorry. Now I think you're starting to get it, Job. So next week we'll look at Job or God's second speech. Well, we'll hear about Leviathan and Behemoth, and I think we'll probably get into the epilogue as well. Depending on our conversations, there's a lot we can talk about Behemoth and Leviathan because they're both used as actual creations on the earth and also as mythical creations representing other things. So, depending on how deep we get into that. Yeah. And depending on how long the haiku is, I mean, it could be a half hour reading, so who knows? And then Lisa's painting, so I mean, right. I just figured you probably would. You'd be inspired by the haiku. Yeah. Any other questions, thoughts? Oh, yes, Roxy. Yes. Yeah. Right, right. Wow. Wow. That's a real thing. They get upset about that. Huh. Wow. And you're kind of like, well, science tells me. So I don't know what you want me to say. Yeah, it's true. That's true. Yes. Yes, that is. And of course, it's man-centric, human-centric, right? We can determine who we are. I'm going to determine who I am as a person, and I'm the center of the universe, so call me they, them. Well, we just throw everything into chaos and confusion. Yeah. That's a very good comment. Thank you, Roxy. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Let me close in prayer, and we'll put tables down. Yeah, we put tables down. I don't need them next week or this week or whatever. Let me pray. I'm confused, just like I was yesterday at the board meeting. Right, but we got to get through Sunday first, like you said yesterday. Mary was helping me along the board meeting yesterday. I was confused and chaotic, and Mary was ordered and designed, and I was grateful for her. I made a few comments, and she kind of like, no, it's like this. Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. All right, let's pray. God in heaven, thank you for this day. Thank you for your speech, your words, your showing up in the clouds, in the whirlwind, in the storm. And God, not only are these questions for Job, but they're really for us too. Forgive us, God, for when we believe that we know more than we do. When we believe that we have the knowledge and wisdom to speak for you and without even asking or checking or looking into what you would actually say. So God, we don't want to be people of chaos and disorder. We don't want to be the center of the universe. We renounce being the center of the universe and we submit our will to your will. Jesus, we proclaim that you are the center of the universe. You created this world for your glory. And you indeed are glorified in the beauty of it, in the order of it, in the design of it, in the display of it. And so, God, I pray that you would help us this day and the days to come to be in awe of your design and order and how you display who you are to us through creation. So, God, do that for us. Show up. Maybe not in a storm, but show up in many ways for us. I ask this in your name, Jesus. Amen.